Greetings again everyone, and here's my review of the final one of Sirui's new Astra series of full-frame anamorphic autofocus lenses, the 100mm version. All three of their models, the 50, the 75 and the 100, are going up for sale on Kickstarter a couple of days after I published this video. There's a link in the description below with an early bird price of $800 per lens or $2,400 for the set of 3 with a carry case, and they're available with a blue flaring pattern or normal flaring. They come with a 3-year warranty and will be available for L-mount, Nikon Z or Sony E-mount cameras. I'd like to thank Sirui very much for sending me early samples of these 3 lenses for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review, and I should stress that these were early samples. Some of their features or bugs may get tweaked or changed before the final product, and I'll try and tell you about that in the description below if they do. For anyone who hasn't seen the other 2 videos, these lenses feature a 1.33 times projection ratio, stretching your image vertically so you can stretch it back horizontally to keep better resolution for widescreen video work, as well as getting distinctive bokeh and flaring effect. It certainly seems like anamorphic lenses continue to capture the interest of video makers. They don't often have great technical image quality and sharpness due to the complex nature of their anamorphic optics, but they do offer a really interesting look, and video makers are often looking for that, looking for something to make their work stand out from the crowd. Let's look at its standout feature then, autofocus, which is still something very unusual to see on an anamorphic optic, and something potentially incredibly useful. I tested this lens's autofocus pretty extensively. If you set your camera's autofocus speed to a lower level, I found level 3 out of 7 worked best on my Sony a7CR camera, then the autofocus works really nicely, travelling smoothly and locking onto your subject very happily. If you turn your camera's autofocus speed up high, for example up to 7 as I do here, then it can get terribly wobbly until it finally locks onto your subject, and then, well, actually it will track your subject okay from there. Video shooters though normally keep their autofocus speeds down for a smoother focus pull effect anyway, so this isn't an especially black mark as far as I'm concerned, but still keep your video autofocus speeds down to 3 or lower for good results. The lens's build quality is quite tough and metallic, and it's obviously fairly big, as you can see here. At 700 grams or just over 1.5 pounds, this is the heaviest of the 3 lenses. Something nice to see is a weather sealing gasket around the metallic rear mount, as well as a USB-C port for future firmware updates. The rear aperture ring has metal grooves for follow focus rigs, and it can be set to turn smoothly for video work or with nice positive clicks in case you want things set in place a little more firmly. Unlike Sirui's earlier aps-c versions of these lenses, you can lock the aperture ring in or out of camera controlled mode on these new full frame lenses. On the side, you also get an auto manual focus switch and an autofocus hold button. Then we get the lens's manual focus ring, which is improved over the earlier aps-c lenses. It too is made of metal and features the same deep grooves as the aperture ring, but this one, as you can see, works in a linear fashion with focus markings on the side. It's still an electronic focus system, it's just that when you switch over to manual focus, the lens's focus motor will simply find the place that you've set it to on the focus scale. This is actually really helpful for manual focusing, and I like the design a lot, but the weakness is that you can't autofocus your lens to the point that you want and then switch over to manual focus without changing your focus position, so swings and roundabouts. A quirk that I noticed is that when shooting as closely as 1 meter or closer to your subject, the manual focus setting does have a very slight wobble to it, picking out movements when you're not actually touching the lens. I expect that's a bit of a bug that may get ironed out in firmware. As you can see here, the lens does exhibit a moderate amount of focus breathing, which is a bit of a shame for a video lens, but actually I've seen worse than this before. You'll only really notice it if you're doing big focus pulls. The lens does not come with a hood, and it does not feature image stabilization. It has a 72mm filter thread size. Overall, I really liked the build quality and functionality of this thing. Just remember to keep your video autofocus speed set to 3 on a Sony camera or whatever lower setting works for you on Nikon and L-mount, and the autofocus system should mostly work fine as long as you focus on an area of your image that actually has some contrasting edges, of course. Let's take a look at the sharpness of this lens then. My current Sony camera is a 61 megapixel A7C-R, which is completely overkill for testing lenses designed for video work. So on the left you can see test pictures which are zoomed in to approximately 32 megapixels, about the resolution for 8K video work, and on the right zoomed in to approximately 8 megapixels, which is all you need for 4K video. At T1.8 in the middle of the image, contrast is good, but sharpness is low, especially when you look at 8K footage. Just stop down to f2 though for a considerable improvement, and at T2.8, the middle of the image is fantastically sharp. Okay, let's look at corner image quality then. This is normally quite a problem for anamorphic lenses, and this optic is no exception. There's no real corner sharpness to speak of at T1.8. T2.8 and T4 see gradual improvement, but the corners are still pretty soft here. T5.6 looks quite good though, and T8 is sharp, although we do get some lateral colour fringing here. Okay, let's take a look at distortion and vignetting now. Anamorphic lenses tend to project your image a little oddly, and we can indeed see a pincushion distortion pinch in the image edges here. Vignetting is quite strong at T1.8, at T2.8 and T4, corner brightness increases, but you'll always have some vignetting to take care of here. The lens's minimum focus distance is 70 centimeters. Close-up image quality is terrible at T1.8 here. That really was the best image quality I could get out of it. T2 looks the same. T2.8 gets a mild improvement. T4 looks better, and T5.6 is finally nice and sharp, albeit with some colour fringing. Next, work against bright light, and this lens is deliberately designed to give you strong, horizontal flaring effect, which it happily does for you. That flaring looks real nice, kind of fabulous. Obviously though, it's an acquired taste, and not every video maker will be looking for this. I'm testing out the lens with neutral flaring here. You can buy an alternative version which flares in a blue colour instead, if you prefer. Next, bokeh. This lens can get you some quite strongly out of focus backgrounds with a nice subtle elliptical shape to them, and I always found the character and softness of its foreground and background bokeh to look real nice. It's distinctive and helps your footage to really jump out. Longitudinal chromatic aberration is quite a problem though, from T1.8 even down to T4. It only begins clearing up at about T5.6 or T8. Overall then, the Sirui 100mm T1.8 anamorphic autofocus lens is enjoyable to use and can get you some really distinctive looking footage while offering autofocus that works quite well, so long as you keep the autofocus speed level down a bit in your camera settings, that is. Optically, it's frankly a poor lens though. The 75mm lens offers far better picture quality, so I'd actually recommend that one over this one instead. But anamorphic lenses always tend to have image quality problems in all fairness. This one is for video makers who are aiming for a certain look. These three lenses are not for people looking for super sharp optics, they're for anyone looking for an interesting video effect while not wanting to give up autofocus, and that's perfectly legitimate in my book, so I personally like them.